Welcome to the Wealth Embodied podcast. I'm your host, Brianna Faringer, an attorney, spiritual guide, and wealth activator. I'm here to help you align your mindset for abundance and break through any glass ceilings with money. If you're ready to embrace your highest calling, manifest with more ease, and create a life that feels lighter and more aligned, then let's dive in. Episodes, which is a two-part special. I am joined by Elizabeth Ashley of the Venus Legacy. She's an amazing mentor and the voice behind the Normalizing the Taboo podcast. She brings a rare blend of sensuality, spirituality, and feminine sovereignty to her work. She speaks with raw truth and divine elegance in ways that open doors most people are afraid to touch. Together we explore what so many people wrestle with quietly: how to reconcile God, spirituality, and the universe, and how these beliefs shape our relationship with money, purpose, trust, and the way we move through life. Our conversation is about reclaiming your power, deepening your connection to whatever you call source, and creating a life that actually feels aligned. I can't wait for you to hear it.
Well, we're going to talk about a couple of things that probably seem, I don't know if the word is inconsistent or in conflict, but God and money.
Ooh,
And all of the things,
so
of which
good.
there are so many. So I'll just give a little background for me about why this topic is really important and why I want to talk to you about it. So I did not grow up religious at all. I was baptized Catholic. Half of my family was very religious. The other half of my family was not at all. And I don't know what it was about it, but just as a child, it was something that was I found it to be scary. The elements of or things that I did see about it felt scary for, a lot of reasons, but it just was never something that I felt aligned with for whatever reason. So for the large majority of my life, I would have considered myself atheist or maybe agnostic. Now I consider myself religious to be open to anything that's outside of me, whatever you call it. And I completely respect, people calling it God and having the religious background. But it's just interesting because I'm so wanting to talk to you about all of your background and the work that you do, because it is so different from where I come from, because religion is just not something that I had. And I think you are using religion in your life in a way that is so different and so empowering for people. And so I'm really excited to talk about it.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And it's it's honestly still so raw for me to hear that. Like, it's beautiful to hear your background, and everybody has like their own experience, like with religion, with Christ, with God, with all of it. And it's so wild for me to talk about it because it was so uncomfortable for me to talk about
Yeah.
it too. When I started to kind of go into the shift and reclaim my relationship with God, I felt like this gremlin. I'm like, I don't know how to talk about this. Like, I'm going to be judged because like I'm coming from spiritual new age. I'm coming from this like tantric and erotic background. I'm coming from like shamanism and the universe and like all of this stuff. But I feel I love Christ. But also the way that I found Christ was like at 16 at a John Mayer concert.
Oh,
So
wow.
my experience has never been traditional. And it's like, and I love your reaction to that. Oh, wow. Right.
Yeah.
Because it's like, yeah, even though I grew up with Catholicism and like we talked about Christ and like Bible school and like when I went to mass with my family, I didn't connect with that source at all until I actually had my own encounter at 16. And it's cool because I even started talking about that and people are like, oh, wait a minute. That's so interesting because it's so obtuse to what I would presume.
Yeah. You know what's funny about that? I'm just thinking about this as you said that.
Yeah.
One of the experiences that I've had that I felt brought me back into who I am as a person was an Usher concert. So hearing you say that is so crazy because it's actually one of the experiences that I had that made me feel so myself and so in my body in a way that I hadn't in a really long time before that. And I look on that as being such a remarkable concert because of how it made me feel.
Yes. Yes. I love that. And that's ultimately like what I love about God is God is a sensorial, sensational experience. And that's, I feel, where my encounters, like even when I stepped foot into Red Rocks Church, which is my church now, but when I stepped foot into that church back in March of 2023, the worship music is what touched my soul. And because it's actually what made me feel like I was coming home to myself, to God, to love. And like I had been doing so many like goddess circles, plant medicine ceremonies, like I was even doing orgies in my late 20s, like at tantra festivals, right? Like rewiring trauma through pleasure and through love. And I had never experienced that level of homecoming and that level of God. It just raptured my heart. And I actually learned about a month ago that your right and left brain hemisphere, one of the only things that actually ignites them at the same time is music.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense though.
Yeah.
Um,
Which is wild that that's where it makes us feel whole,
yeah.
right? Because like ultimately we are in those moments.
Yeah. Um, well, and just to have some context for people that are listening, like one of the reasons I really wanted to talk to you so much is because, people that listen to my podcast know I'm very much into money and energetics, but I'm also, consider myself a very spiritual person, not religious at all. And something that comes up in conversations I have with people that I work on is this conflict that they have between, I would say, religion and anything else outside of them. They see them as being two or however many distinct things that are not complementary to each other. Um, and that's a hard thing, I think, for people to really figure out how to close that gap. And it's a gap I have a hard time closing for people because I don't have a religious background. And so that's one of the reasons I really wanted, to have this conversation with you, because you have done that, but you also are continuing to do that through the work that you're doing with people. So if you would want to speak on that a little bit, that'd be great.
Totally. Yeah. Some context and background that I can express too. And a lot of like my listeners know this about me, but I welcome new listeners all the time to my podcast. And it's like, I'm a Gemini, so I am the opposition. I'm a Libra rising, so I'm also to some degree balance, harmony, opposites. And I've started to realize, and even with my visibility, holy and hot visibility, right? It's like I've really started to realize that almost like our opposition is what makes us come into wholeness. And that's like a lot of the philosophy of Tantra. If you take it out of Neo-Tantrism, which is more of like the sex movement of it, the philosophy is more ancient than yoga and like Eastern practices, but it's a really rich and robust philosophy. And it's all about like the opposites, kind of like non-duality being or duality being non-duality. And so I've started to learn too that like if there's gonna be an opposing view or an opposition, then there is a bridge that's just not being dove into or processed quite yet. And it takes, I think, a lot within ourselves to know how to bridge the worlds in that way. And I feel like it's kind of like a superpower of mine because of the way that I was built and designed. Also in the Mayan cosmovision, I'm quite literally Akhabal, like I'm a 13 Akhabal, Oshlahu Akhabal, which is the ascension or the witch of partnership. It's the opposition of
interesting.
Yeah, it's like, how do we ascend? What opposition? How do we bring earth and sky, heaven and earth, spirit and human, like together, man, woman, all of it. So I feel like it's a lot of my destiny in a lot of ways. But around this whole thing around like spirituality and religion, that's what we kind of want to talk about, right?
Yeah. And I think, because yes, and also the way that I have interpreted the conversations I've had with people that have this conflict is it's either an inability to trust anything outside of themselves or to trust anything other than God. And so it's almost, or like whatever the religious, symbol is that they're referring to, but it's like this inability to, it's like God to the exclusion of everything else, right? And that's just not how I view the world that we live in. Again, not being religious, I view everything outside of myself as just being love and support and energy that's here to help us and guide us to live our most aligned lives. And I don't care what it's called, really. I call it the universe. Sometimes I call it the source. Sometimes I call it nature. I really consider it an all-encompassing just energy of love and support. But for people that they can't either trust outside of God, or maybe they've had mistrust with God and they're trying to figure out, how do I trust something else outside of myself? So I know that's kind of a lot of things, but
yeah, what's coming up for me immediately as we talk about that is I see the relationship with God like any relationship. And I think that that's like ultimately like you're going to have a better relationship with other people if you know how to be in relationship with yourself. Yeah. And I think it's the same thing with the context of God. The basis of what I view with God is the intimate connection that we sovereignly create with that source, because that's where a lot of the distortion, the manipulation, and the confusion and the separation has come from. It's come from like, oh, well, God is separate. God is outside of myself. I am God. Like there's so many connotations there. And for me, I'm just like, I have kind of a wild perspective on God. I see God as, like, if you break it down like an acronym, the grand order of design. Mm-hmm. So that's helpful for some people that are very triggered by the word God. I also was listening to a recording that I did recently not recently, like a while ago in my program Honeypot. And I talked about like God as an acronym of also like good old deliciousness, like good old deliciousness. Like it's like the reality that you're creating, right? Right. And so, there's that context of God. I see God as creator. I see God as like the ultimate, like the thing that created me and created the world. I also see God, and this is very like unique